guess what? Your brain just might be lying to you.
Yeah. I'm inspired. I'm inspired.
Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumit Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today I'm talking all about how your mind or your brain might be lying to you. You see, a lot of times we have these things called cognitive distortions, okay? These include things like overgeneralization or black and white thinking or mind reading or catastrophization, also called magnification, right? There's a lot of things that our brain does when we are at a specific state of beingness, or even when we're having this kind of a mental disorder, or even when we're in a very low mood, where it starts to inaccurately predict things and work in such a way that it might be lying to us. It convinces us that we're not good enough. It convinces us that we can't possibly do this thing. It keeps us in a very specific space or a comfort zone. And so I've started to understand that when I was depressed a really long time ago, I would start lying to people. And at first I thought, okay, I'm lying to people because I want to make myself look good, right? This kind of fabrication, this idea of, okay, I'm gonna make the story a lot cooler than it actually is. Now, why did I do that in the first place? I wanted people to accept me, I wanted people to love me, and I wanted to belong, okay? So start to understand that if you're lying, and if you're a liar, you don't have integrity in your values. You might say that you have integrity, but you really don't, okay? So the thing about lying is you're hiding something, okay? Once you're hiding something, it starts to ruminate. It's closer to the area of repression, where you're not fully embracing what is honest, what is out there, what is real. So you're going into this fantasy world, right? I've struggled with this for a really, really long time, so I can speak about it and how to overcome it. First of all, you got to get to this level of acceptance, okay? Acceptance is the most important thing. Once you get to the point of like, hey, I accept the fact that I'm, exaggerating these claims, or I'm, doing this thing that way, and finally start to understand the thing better. So the thing about it is, I was sometimes confabulating. Now, what is confabulation? Confabulation is when you look towards your memory and your brain fills in the blanks with some kind of a story. You see, our memories are very, very inaccurate. They are not accurate because there's a lot of research that shows every time you bring up a memory, it distorts it very slightly. Okay, it's like the game of Chinese whispers, right? You whisper it onto one person, and they whisper it onto somebody else, and by the time it gets to the 17th person, they hear a completely different story. So the same thing happens with our memory. We're constantly skewing it, and it's the way we interpret that memory, the way we frame the narrative around that memory, that gets us to feel certain ways or do certain things, or feel guilt, or perhaps we even, we feel an identification with that memory that slowly starts to create our persona or our character. So really start to understand that confabulation is a lie, okay? But it's not a lie where you're openly lying. It's just that your memory doesn't function as well as it does over the many years, right? We start to change the narrative at times. So instead of saying, why are you lying to me? Or why do you think that I'm going to believe you? And all these different things, and start blaming these people who are lying, or confabulating rather than lying. I mean, lying is a very different story, right? Confabulation is more like, it's more of a brain hardware issue where they're like, hey, like, I'm not going to remember every little detail, right? So when you can, instead of blaming them, you want to get them to point it out to them. Hey, this might be confabulation, right? Our memory doesn't always work the best, like over the years. So it's totally fine if you don't remember that thing. And also the second thing is to get them to, the next time that they bring up that memory, the fact that they can point it out themselves, right? So they don't make the same mistake as they did earlier. So those are the two things that I would definitely say when it comes down to this. So what does this teach us? I mean, this just teaches us you might be a lot cooler than you think. You might be a lot stronger than you think. You might be a lot more richer than you think. You might be a lot more professional than you think. There are a lot of things that you might not have considered because you're just in your own mind and looking at your own life like this. but you have certain blind spots, or you don't see that from the outside. You don't see your character from the outside. So how can you possibly say that I am like this or I'm like that, right? You don't know how you appear to other people unless you ask them, and then you start to gain some kind of a pattern maybe, right? If you ask 2 people what they think of you, you're going to get maybe a duality there, right? But if you ask 100 people what they think of you, now you can actually plot the trends and the patterns. And then once you have those patterns, then you can start to change your behavior around, then you can start to dress differently, maybe present yourself differently. You see, there's a lot of different things which you can be doing. However, don't just go by what your brain is telling you in those moments, okay? Your brain is telling you you're not good enough because of the past memories and the storyline and the confabulation, or the so-called cognitive distortions. Don't rely on the distortions to create your reality for you. You want to distort the reality around you by having a very sharp mind, okay? By having a very sharp mind, then you can actually spot when your brain is doing these little glitches. And once you can spot those glitches and reframe them and start to really move forward and be like, hey, I'm just going to lean into my truth right now, because I know no matter what, it will all work out the way that it's supposed to. Okay? When you have this incredible mindset of like really being a person who is honest, who has value, who doesn't need to lie to impress people, but instead it's just coming from their pure space, their heart-centered space, you're actually going to cause a lot more impact. And hey, maybe you might not have trillions of followers or, a bank account that's giant, but what you do have is something that is precious, a very precious commodity, which is truth. And once you have that truth, guess what? You're going to be a revolutionary. You're going to cause your own empire to emerge, because guess what? Not everybody's being truthful. Now, we can distort lies, we can have white lies, we can have little lies here and there. That doesn't take away from your truth. And the biggest lie is not the lie you tell to others. The biggest lie is the lie that you tell yourself. The lie of, I'm not good enough. The lie of, oh, I can't do it. The lie of, oh, I'll never be able to get into flow. So instead of pointing the fingers and, there's always 3 pointing back, yourself, right? Instead of pointing fingers, instead point it towards your heart. And understand, you have something very special. That is your honesty. That is your integrity. That is your ability to speak the truth and speak your inner truth, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how uncomfortable it gets, because once you can have that radical honesty, you now have a responsibility for your communication. And with that, you gain in power, you gain in status, you gain in happiness, and you become a better person overall. Have an incredible day. May the flow be with you and stay legendary. Let's get it today. Boom.